Hello and welcome to video 4 of how to beat stage fright. There's one more to come next week. This one is about that last minute, last hour, whatever it is, where you really start to feel nervous. Stay tuned if you think that'll be helpful. Okay, so in that moment, in that pre-gig tension moment, you need to try and ideally do 3 things. First thing you want to do is stop them getting worse, stop them escalating. The second thing you want to do is try and calm down a little bit to the point where you can function again properly. And the third thing is ideally you channel it positively. Okay, so how do we stop escalating? Well, obviously the last video should help you, that idea of a ritual. So will some of these things. This is what you get when you search the internet for how to beat anxiety or stage fright. There's hundreds of these tips. They're everywhere. They won't be difficult to find. Keep finding them. Try them all and see which ones work best for you. There is something they all have in common. Most of them can be boiled down to don't think about the thing that you're going to do. Think about something else. They're all distraction, basically. So that should also stop you escalating, and if you're lucky it will calm you down just a little bit because you're not focusing on what it is you're nervous about. There's lots of ways of doing that. Take your pick. One that's worked particularly well for me is this idea of this is exciting. And I got this from, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, Simon Sinek. He's an interesting chap. He's worth checking out on YouTube. He talks about the fact that nerves have exactly the same physical symptoms as excitement. And so you can reinterpret your nerves, your anxiety as excitement. You just have to tell yourself over and over again. I tried this recently with some students. We were all about to perform. We were all nervous, including me. So I just started saying, "Are you excited?" And then acted excited. And it was an act, believe me. But then they picked up on it and they started saying it back to me. They started saying it to each other, and their excitement then affected me positively. And we ended up kind of firing each other up rather than descending into a sort of anxiety pit. We got hyped up and excited. It was really quite fascinating. I think it's something that's got better with practice. I've also done it on a high ropes course. That was the first time I did it. It didn't work as well, but it did work. So give that one a go. But to be honest, try any of them, but try them consistently. Don't try one for 9 seconds and then give up on it. You've got to kind of keep going. Okay, how do we channel it positively? Okay, well, there's something you need to understand here. You might not have dug up in your Google search because it took me a while to find it. 2 things, actually. One is that there's a neuroscience cognitive psychology theory called explicit monitoring theory. And basically what it says is that if you are observing yourself too closely, if you're explicitly monitoring yourself, if you're actively thinking about what you're doing, you cannot achieve flow. And we talked about flow in a second video. You cannot get there if you're too worried or too attentive to what you're doing. So a good example would be a football player kicking a penalty in a World Cup. They're thinking about what they're doing. They're doing it because of all the pressure, but they are overthinking it. You've probably heard that phrase. You're overthinking it. There's actually some serious cognitive science behind that statement. You're overthinking it. When you're learning something, this part of your brain is doing loads of work. When you've learned it, it calms down. And you trigger like a memory, like a computer recalling a program from a bit further down the base. When you get anxious again, when you get nervous, this part of your brain fires back up again. So it's as if you're learning it again. You're overthinking it. So you need to leave parts of your brain on automatic pilot. Now, if you're thinking about a lot of things, that might happen by itself. Stop thinking about playing the guitar or speaking and look at the audience and think about the room and the lights and think about the meaning behind what you're saying rather than thinking about the mechanics of the words. Go with the flow. You'll be all right. And then you may find flow. Another thing that you might not know, because again, it took me a while to find it, but about 100 years ago, there were 2 Harvard psychologists that showed that too much anxiety, this is no surprise, impairs performance, But they also found that not enough anxiety impairs performance. Okay, think about that. If you're not nervous enough, you don't perform as well as if you're nervous the right amount. There can be too little anxiety. You could not care. Again, going back to this, you kind of end up back in apathy again. So you need a little bit of nerves to really bring the best out in you. It forces you to live in the moment. It forces you to focus. It forces you to bring your A game, and it forces you to work really hard, right? So none of those are bad things. So when we're trying to calm down, we don't want to calm all the way back down to where you are now. We don't want to calm down to feeling like you're sitting on the sofa. We need that little bit of energy. So start seeing that as a positive. Start seeing a little bit of anxiety as a positive thing. Distract yourself. Get yourself down to somewhere where you're a little bit fired up. Tell yourself it's excitement. And fingers crossed, you'll be okay. Please remember that all these things get better with practice. So if you try all this stuff at your next gig, it may only work a little bit. But if you keep doing it, it should get easier. All right, thanks for tuning in. I've got one final strategy for you next week, which I think is kind of the most powerful one. I've saved it till last. Obviously, it's the one that I think has made the most difference to me. Well, strategy 3 did too. But anyway, so I'll see you next time for that. Thank you very much. See you soon.